Hey y'all, it is your favorite advocate, Amani here to give you another presentation in our Get series, Gifted, Enlightened, and Transparent. And today we're going to be talking about private foundation funding. So let's dive in. So here's my definition of a grant yet again. If you didn't hear it in our first video last week where we talked about an overview of different grants, here you go. A monetary resource distributed by an institution, federal, state, or local government, usually in response to a specific societal issue for a targeted purpose or population. Today, we're going to dive deeper into private foundations and types of grants that they distribute. Now, private foundations usually distribute grants through two pipelines. The first is an application process, which can be usually on an online portal. The applicant will include a lot of different details ranging from their actual project proposal, a project narrative talking about what the project is going to accomplish and the objectives and goals. Sometimes it'll also include a budget, always talking about the target populations that are going to be served, a timeline, and expected outcomes. Another way that private grants will distribute funds is through an LOI submission. So, not all grants have an application window with an online portal that they advertise is open from this date to this date. And then they review those. But sometimes, instead of having people submit an entire proposal with all those different components, they'll submit a letter of interest. And in contrast to a full application, the letter of interest includes much less detail, usually a description of the project instead of a full narrative, the total project budget, so that the funder can decide if they want to cover the entire project or just a portion of the project. Also, it will include a timeline just to let the funder know when the goals of the project will be completed, and then the requested funding. LOIs can be sent at any time throughout the year. You could print a whole bunch of LOIs right now and send them across a few private foundations. But private foundations usually have board meetings. They're often quarterly, and that's the time when they will review all the LOIs they get, select which ones they want to fund, and reach out to submitters. So now let's go over some of the grant making guidelines that you'll want to cover, because even if you send out an LOI, in response to that, the funder will send you an invitation to submit a full proposal. They'll accept your LOI. They'll tell you they love the idea, but they now need to see a full breakdown of what you're going to do. And then in response to that breakdown, you would get a check. Now, for both that full breakdown, full proposal, or an application portal, here are some of the guidelines that you'll want to be aware of when you are going through your submission. These are some general questions that we see pop up in a lot of funder guidelines. So let's discuss them here. First of all is the project scope. Does the project promote regional or community vitality? Is your project going to assist a certain region, a certain area, or a certain community of folks? Will the proposed activities reach the target community? Are we distributing direct resources, services, products to a specific population? What is that population? Be very specific, be as specific as possible. You in your heart could say, oh, yeah, this is for all young people between the ages of 17 and lower. But if you think about what your basketball program is that's based in middle schools, then that's really going to target a specific type of young person. Maybe you're targeting young people from low income backgrounds or impoverished neighborhoods. Put that into your application. This is for youth ages or grades 6 through 9 or 5 through 6 or whatever it is, that specific window. Where do you see the most types of people? Really categorize those types of people. Get kind of cliche in this part when you're talking about the type of population you're going to be serving. even though you might have a wider vision. Be as specific as possible. And then talk about your project collaborations, whether that's partners, whether that's a team of specific staff people or volunteers that you're working with. Outline who you're collaborating with, who's also investing time and energy into this project. Next to scope, we've also got project sustainability. This is a good thing. If your project is using funds from other sources, make sure to list those sources. Is the project of interest supported by other funders? If it is, even if it's partially self funded, be clear, be transparent about that. Is the applicant investing some of his own money into the project? It's more sustainable when there are more sources of revenue coming into the project itself. Next, we got organizational capacity, which will expand on what you touch in when you talk about the project sustainability and the team that you have or the collaborators that you're working with. Does the applicant organization have the capacity to successfully complete the project? That's what they're looking at overall. Do they have enough people on their team? Do they have advisors that they're working with? Do they have accountants? Do they have other funders? Are they learning or partnering from other nonprofits that are also in this field, that are also doing the work? If you do, make sure to be very, very clear about that so that your funder can see that you have the capacity to carry this throughout the duration of the project. Is the applicant reaching out for expertise in areas where the organization does not have expertise on staff? So if you don't have an accountant on staff, do you have an accountant in the budget that you go to and pay for to help look over your books? If you are doing a youth program and you don't have counselors on staff, do you have counselors that you partner with or a counseling organization that comes in and talks to the youth? Make sure that you outline all of those elements and show where you're using partnerships to support. All right. Some other project categories. We talked about this. We touched on this in our last overview video, but these are all categories you should be getting funding for. And then the final piece is reporting. When you get a grant, more often than not, your funder is going to be looking for a report on how the awarded funds were used. Make sure to share details of that project. If you serviced 30 youth before you got funded by a funder, and then with that funding, you were able to serve an additional 50 youth, make sure to outline the impact of that by talking about how you were able to expand your service population using the funding. These are reports that the grantor also needs to continue to support their foundation. And so if you aren't successfully submitting those reports, more likely than not, you won't be refunded. So make sure that you're tracking that data as you're doing the work. All right. Now we're going to talk a bit about fellowships. We're going to dive into certain types of fellowships. So I just want to share a quote from the CEO of the Roddenberry Foundation. If funders want less talk and more walk in the field of systems change, it's time they started funding small, locally led organizations. The time of only huge, national, lots of staff, nonprofits with millions and millions and millions of dollars in the bank budgets is over. Funders are now looking for those small organizations, those grassroots groups, and they want to fund you. So the fun thing about fellowships is that you're not just getting money, you're also getting mentorship. You're also getting access to a network. You're also getting access to in kind resources that you usually have to pay for to expand your organization. Value is in the network. These are some pictures from when I was a part of the 2019 most recently funded cohort, my first year as a Roddenberry Fellow, my first grant of all time. And what I can say that I have still to this day, even though the $50,000 has been spent, are relationships. And that's the exciting thing about grants. So let's take a look at some specific types of grants. You might want to write these down if you see a focus area that meets or could meet a need in the work that you do. So let's talk about the Roddenberry Foundation a little bit more. It is national, it is US based. Now they do have some global types of prizes and funds. So if you're not in the US, there's still some opportunities with the Roddenberry Foundation, but I'm going to focus on what we have with this fellowship. $50,000 over the course of 12 months. So they're going to send you a $12,000 500 check every quarter of the year for those individuals and organizations that were selected through. They have an application portal that you submit during a certain time of year. I believe it's in June. So I think a new opening is coming up. Definitely check into that. Some of the areas that they fund are environmental, LGBTQ rights, civil rights. And here's a quote from the foundation. I'm not going to read it out entirely because I just want you guys to see some of the similarities between what these funders are saying when they're looking for fellows. They want to support people who have an innovative idea, something that's new, something they've never heard about before, from people who want or have the desire to change the world. Another foundation, which I learned about this when I was in the Roddenberry Foundation. And that's another cool thing about being in a network. You hear about other opportunities that other people in your cohort also participated in. And one of those that I heard about was Echoing Green Fellowship. Now, this one's also national. This foundation is 35 years old. The Roddenberry Foundation is young. It launched in 2018, whereas this one is a bit more established. It's been around a while. They give a little bit more money, and their program is a bit longer with $80,000 over the course of 18 months. And they work in advanced equity, education, climate justice, another word for environmental, human rights, health, and more. Again, they're looking for leaders, and they're looking to provide them with tools and resources to help bring their new visions to life. Another one that I've applied for, I've actually applied for this one, is the Shuttleworth Foundation. Now, they give even more monies. They're also US based. They give $275,000 over the course of 12 months. And they report quite a range of things. But what they really hone in on is tech, which is why I wasn't granted this grant, but I did have a tech idea. And if you have a tech idea, what I'll offer you is the advice of actually getting that idea piloted, having some sort of template out where your tech idea can actually demonstrate its function and maybe even its potential impact and reach some of the target population, just to demonstrate the work behind what your tech is doing. If you need the funding to expand your tech or to actually implement it on a wide scale, then this is the perfect foundation opportunity for you to apply to. Another one is the Hasseline Fellowship. Now, this one is global. They're looking for folks all over the world, and this funder is about 10 years old. Now, in addition to providing $10,000 in monies, they also have a 6-week residency in DC. So if you've always wanted to live in DC, you want the opportunity to just really immerse yourself in DC, then this is a cool fellowship for you. Now, what I will put as a caveat with the $10,000 is 5,000 of that 10,000 is actually an Amazon like credit. And so it's unique to Hassilon. We see this in other funders too. Most funders give unrestricted funding, but sometimes you got to really look at the fine print, go to their Q&As, go to their webinars so that you know if there's a specific place where you have to spend that money, a specific area you have to spend it on, or something like that. They support health, climate, and equity tech. Okay, so they're a tech organization as well. This last one, US based, they award between $15,000 and $1 million. Now, the $1 million is just one grand prize. They will fund about 10 to 12-ish people, but only one of those people is going to get $1 million check, okay? And they support revenue generating ventures across a range of areas, including products and services, healthcare, media, entertainment, and the such, okay? So let's really speed through the conclusion of this. The type of funding depends on the source. So there are corporate funders, there are family and independent foundations. Those are the private foundations that actually have endowments that are passed on through family. But other types of funders are corporate, community, and public charity foundations. And so the type of money that you're getting depends on who's actually sponsoring that money and what their priorities are. But when it comes to finding grants, think about establishing an entity like an LLC or a nonprofit, but there are people that will fund individuals. Also, think about some directories. Some of them are paid, but there are also free ones like these watchdog listings that you can look into. Join my community, and I will send you these slides. I'll send you links to these watchdogs listings. And just to wrap up quickly, think about drafting your own proposal template and joining a network so that you can access more funds. And thank you.